So my name is Alexandra Van Milligan, and I'm the owner of Double A Design. And I am here with Lisa, and she is in Guelph, Ontario, Canada, for those of you who don't know where that is. So about 5 hours away from Michigan. But the cool thing about being remote is that we can teach each other and learn from each other from so far away. So today and over the next 6 weeks, I am going to be teaching y'all and Lisa how to build a website in the same way that I would do it. So just want to go over a quick agenda. This course is designed so that you can take it at home too. If you would like to use any of these materials, please email me and I will add you to the Google Classroom. And today, what we're going to be doing is we'll go over a couple of intros. So I'll talk a little bit about myself and my background. We'll talk about what websites are and sort of the different ways that you can use a website. We'll go over Lisa's homework because she is a great student and turned that in last night. And then we're going to talk about branding. So we will look at a couple of different exemplar brand guides, and then I will talk a little bit about resources as you start to build that foundation. Before you even touch your Wix or Squarespace site, you want to make sure that you know what you're doing, and everything has this alignment that's going to be consistent across all digital platforms. So that's the plan for today. And the homework for next week, if you are following along live, is to create your own brand guide. So quick agenda. Let's go ahead and start with introductions. I'm going to turn the floor over to Lisa.
Hi, my name is Lisa, and I reached out to Alex via the Wix, what do you call it, hire a professional. And yeah, so she emailed me back and we've just been communicating and trying to find something that works best for both of us. And here we are, and this is what we're doing, and I think it's going to be great. So
can you tell us a little bit about your background and sort of like, I really liked your why statement and some of the content that you sent me this week. So can you talk a little bit about that? Do you feel comfortable?
Sure. So I've been a teacher my kind of whole life. That's all I've really ever wanted to do, is to teach. But then in the last few years, I've just been really kind of thinking about why that is my choice and how that's impacting me, and kind of reevaluating now that I'm at 31, kind of what my next step in my career is going to be like, and really trying to just think about my role and my impact on kind of the world and my community, and how I'm rising to kind of everything that's happening in the world right now, and how I'm making sure that I'm making a positive contribution. And yeah, just really also focusing on my mental health and my mental well-being, and trying to figure out if there is a way and a space kind of for me to have a job and have a career and to be successful in that regard, while still prioritizing myself and not kind of forcing myself into boxes that society has kind of created. And yeah, just really kind of taking this time to revamp my ideas of kind of life and what it's about, and trying to build something from the ground up that's really authentic to me, and not I'm just really doing kind of experiment. I really like experiments. I can really like kind of like status. I like stats and that sort of thing. So I really like learning for myself. So I'm kind of looking at it sort of as an experiment of, is it possible to do this where I really organize my time based on like what it feels like for me and my capacity. And anyway, it's
Yeah, no,
I could go on and on and on, but
no, that's amazing. I'm working for a solar company right now, and my boss always says your time, you should treat your time like you treat your bank account. You should know where it goes. And yeah, that's amazing that you're starting to think about, does my time, the way that I'm spending my time, align with like what I want and need from my life.
mm-hmm.
I've had so much time right now to do that. because we've gotten the blessing of spending a lot of time meditatively alone. So,
Yeah.
so that's cool. And I think a lot of people are in your same boat where they're like, the world got shaken up, and do I want the pieces to all fall back into the same place, or could I choose now that there is this disruption and this friction to live a little bit differently? So that's really cool. I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. And my name is Alexandra. You know that, but for everyone out there, I used to teach high school English, and went back to school about 3 years into my career to try to learn how to design software and websites. So my passion is for communication. I was a rhetoric teacher, and rhetoric is just the art of effective communication. So when people are like, wow, that was a huge career shift, I'm like, actually, like, you would think that it is, but it's not, because what I did was shifted from verbal communication and communication in one genre, and then was like, okay, how can I apply all of these skills to now a web page, which is just communication, right? It's all about communicating your brand identity, and thinking about what you want your user to do, think, or feel. So those are the three questions that I think are at the basis of any good piece of communication. Who am I? Is my audience? So who are you? And what do we want our audience to do, think? And I think that could also be translated to believe. So think or believe about me and my business. And what do I want them to feel? And so that's your purpose, right? So when someone comes to this site, which might be their very first impression of you as a business owner or as an artist, as a creative, what do you want them to do, right? So what's the action step? So I was talking to my friend last night in Denver, and there are really like two types of websites, in my opinion. One is just like a legitimizing website, which means I want a website because when people ask me, hey, what's your website? I don't want to send them to my Facebook. I don't want to send them to my Instagram. And I want to look legit, right? I want to look like a real business. And those are almost like what I would call a digital business card. And then there's also websites that are meant to draw and convert leads. So if you're in an industry like I am, so web design, or if you are doing sales or marketing or any types of those things, then you probably also want your website to become this platform where you're connecting with other people and hopefully starting to gather the types of connections that would be your ideal client. So by producing content on a weekly or monthly basis and continually connecting with your audience, just developing this like digital and remote relationship that will eventually become a customer or client. So those are the two types. And just off the top of your head, which one of those do you feel like you more align with right now?
The second one for sure, with the connecting, and I do want it to be kind of like an experience. I like the idea of the website kind of be like you're having a conversation with me, kind of like that kind of thing. And for sure it will be the point of contact that people go to book photo shoots or to kind of put in an order. So definitely bringing in leads that way. But also kind of the like legitimizing website in the sense that like for the photography side of things, I feel like I need a website. I need to be legitimate in that regard. So kind of both, but mainly the latter.
Cool. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to take a look at your homework. And just sorry?
I typed a lot.
I saw. That's good though. It'll be good. I think it's really nice to have for everyone out there. It's nice to like answer all of these questions in writing, because it really tests whether you know the answer or not. So like I've had conversations with people like, oh, I don't need to do that. I know my brand. I know my brand. I know my brand. But if you can't say that like that, then you're not ready, right? Because you never know when you're in that conversation with a potential client or just with a human being, where they're gonna be like, oh, tell me about yourself. And you're like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay, so I have it up on the screen. But I want to go through these questions, and as to the best of your ability, if you could just like talk more organically rather than reading off the screen. But I will have the assignment up for you as to reference as notes in case you're like, I did this 4 days ago.
Okay.
So tell me about your company and the name of your company and a little bit about like why you chose that name.
Okay, so the name of my company is called Pop-Up Studios, and I chose Pop-Up for, as you can see, a lot of different reasons. So Pop-Up kind of works for me because I'm really kind of learning about myself that I work in time of like feelings and time of moods and times of experiences and times of connections with people. And I don't really work in terms of times of day or like in terms of a week or in terms of a month. And so really my energy kind of pops up in kind of a cyclical way in the same way that my kind of energy goes low. So with this, I'm trying to build into the brand from the beginning the idea that I pop up when I have energy, when I pop up when I have ideas of things that I want to implement, and I just kind of do something for a limited amount of time, and then I kind of lay low. Again, the whole point of this for me is really to be authentic to myself and kind of create this day-to-day life where I have the control to manage based on my moods and prioritize my self-care when I need to, and kind of have that balance. Plus with me too, I have like an endless stream of ideas that pop into my head. And I really like trying different things and learning different things in the same way that you said, like teaching seems like a far off kind of alternate route that you're on now. For me, it seems like it's been kind of building to this in a lot of ways. And being a teacher, I was teaching mainly the primary grades for most of my kind of undergrad in the Con Ed program. And then I switched to grade 7, 8 after that. So kind of throughout the whole teaching process, I've always been learning new subjects, new content, having to figure it out in a way that I can then communicate it to other people. And really just kind of when I switched to the older grades, it became so clear to me that mental health and learning boundaries and healthy relationships and all of those things are really like the most important, and that kind of like emotional support that the kids need and everyone needs just kind of really started to come to the surface for me. And I found that I really enjoyed teaching the kids about just like life and mental health and how you need to make yourself priority and take care of yourselves and encourage each other to be your best selves and blah, 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 all of these things. And then I kind of realized that I wasn't really doing that myself exactly. I think I kind of created or had this idea of my teaching life where I felt like it checked all of the boxes that I needed. But then I really started wondering what those boxes were and if they really fit for me. And then it just kind of got to a point where I realized this teaching career, the process of being unemployed every summer and laid off and having to go back to supplying and all of this has really been possibly like detrimental to my process and my emotional well-being and all of those sorts of things, and just needing to be consistently on and consistently able to give my best self to the kids just wasn't a possibility, because for me my moods changed drastically, my energy changed just drastically, and so I just wasn't being the person that I felt they should be for the kids at all times. And then that kind of fed the idea in my head that I wasn't doing enough or I wasn't this or that, because again I'm trying to fit myself into these boxes that kind of society's created, and I haven't really taken the time to figure out my own boxes.
Yeah.
So.
I commiserate with a lot of that. Teaching is hard. I think it's like one of those weird professions that everybody kind of thinks they understand because they went to school, like they were in elementary school and they were in high school and their kids have teachers and stuff like that. And so they're like, yeah, I know what it's like. And you're like, no, like it's the most emotionally both rewarding, but also just like a draining experience to be that leader for 8 hours a day or more.
Entirely, yeah, entirely depleting for sure.
I miss being in the classroom, but there's the sustainability element was a huge piece for me too.
Yes, sustainability was the big word that I was using at the beginning kind of this journey. Was it's just really not a sustainable career for me. Like, yeah, like you said, the emotional and mental part of it, I just found that all of my energy was going towards the kids, and it still wasn't enough, and it still wasn't giving them the support that they needed. And it left me with no energy for myself, no energy for my loved ones. And it was just, yeah, I hit a point where it was just too much. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
I love this. I'm scrolling down a little bit because I don't want to run out of time to get to the meaty parts. But thank you so much for sharing. I know that it takes a lot to like put all of that stuff into words. And what I would say is that this is now your bio, right? So it can't all go on the website. But as we start to pare down, these are the words that you can literally just like now copy, paste, and then pare down to help people understand who you are. I think that's a huge part of being a business owner these days is people are really craving connection. And so the more that you can be authentic and be your authentic self to the degree that it makes sense in your business, right? Like you don't have to tell your life story. But that little piece, what you just said was super relevant, right? Like you had this experience as a teacher and now you're moving towards sustainability and positivity and finding a way to give that to others through your art and through your creation and through your photography. Is that right?
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. So mission statements are really hard because like, it's, you get like 2 sentences, right? But I like what you have down here. This is very succinct and I think this is really pretty too. So nice work. It looks super professional. So it says wholehearted Guelph local photographer, creator, and maker. I like that word. Very trendy right now. Looking to spread self-love and acceptance of the unconventional. Okay, so that's super succinct. That sounds like your mission statement, which is perfect.
Okay.
You matter, you're loved, you're enough. I love that. That's perfect. So celebration of like who we are as people. And yeah, so you've got your mission statement right here. This is why you're doing what you're doing. And you just sort of touched on that when you were telling about your journey as well, is that this seeking out sustainability and not necessarily feeling like you need to do what's expected or normal anymore because it wasn't working for you.
Yeah, precisely. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So competitors, we've got a bunch of different little competitors here. And what I mean when I say competitors is like, obviously I don't like to pit small business owners against each other, but who's also in your field, right? So we could open up any one of these, and I'm just going to open up one of them. And I'm not looking at it like to be like, ooh, how can I do better? But just like, what are they doing and what do I like about it, right?
Yeah.
So this could be any small photography or maker studio that you appreciate. And I just like to start like from here, and I'm sure that you've done this as well, just like making a list of like, well, what do I like about this and what things could I borrow, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we've got a mission statement up here, just a very quick little bit about this person.
For this one, it was the most kind of similar in terms of the shop side of things, like the garlands and the kind of, I like the idea of the photography props because that's another thing that I was kind of thinking about. And I liked the initial thing that popped up, but I don't know what that's called. The kind of like message from when we first clicked on the website. I like that part. And yeah, so there's not really, aside from that website, there's not too much that, or too many websites that I found that have the combination of both things. So in an email I sent you, I kind of have started would have titled the document as my business plan. I just have started going through the photography competitors in there that are actually like local photographers. But then some of the shops that I've listed below are just kind of a similar thing to kind of what I'm selling. And then, yeah, so with the photographer competitors, that's when I kind of realized how how everyone who gets portraits is kind of fitting the same kind of idea of, oh, you had a family, or oh, you had a baby, therefore you're successful, therefore you get a portrait, because and that's when through that photography competitive research is when I really kind of noticed the kind of similarities between all of them, kind of picturing the same family, the same family basically. And that's when I really started to realize that that's kind of not what I wanted to do. And I wanted to focus more on the individual and their milestones that are just as important and just as kind of worthy as somebody who's having a baby. Like, that's great too. But if you just, started a new job or left an unhealthy relationship or like whatever, I feel like that's equally as deserving kind of thing. Yeah.
What you're saying, because I think that this is like a really like lovely way to put that. And I, honestly, I think that's a really insightful thing to say is like, you have wedding photographers and you have like prenatal photographers and postnatal photographers. I don't know exactly the industry terms for all of those. And but yeah, it is to celebrate these significant moments in our lives. But that sentence that you just said, like starting a new career is just as deserving of celebration, right? And that's why I really love like a lot of the boudoir photographers that have, I feel like in the last 10 years really emerged and started to create names for themselves across the US and Canada. Because it's so much more like a celebration of like you as a human and like your femininity and your beauty or your masculinity, even, let me not gender it. But yeah, I think that's really cool. And that's a great way for you to differentiate yourself as a business. And I think I would put that on there because I think a lot of people would connect with that. And it really like it aligns with your personal journey too, right? Like I knew that I could do X, Y, and Z and that it would be a very traditional path, but because that wasn't working for me, like, can I also find ways to celebrate the path that I've chosen? And you can too. And I love to photograph that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I did a boudoir shoot with with a friend of mine actually before Christmas, and it was so much fun. It was, oh my gosh. And for like the next, I don't know, still she's messaging me being like, I feel so much better about my body. Every time I look at these pictures, I see more beauty. I feel more comfortable. Like, I'm so hot. I'm so this. I'm so that. And like, that's exactly kind of what I want to be doing. I want people to be feeling good about themselves, good about their bodies, good about, who they are. And I think that too kind of specify or like kind of hones in a little bit more on my kind of target audience, because I feel like this kind of time of acceptance, at least in my experiences, as much as being like around the age of 30 and being in this relationship with my body is so different than when I was 20. So I think it will probably end up targeting more towards like the 30 something individual because of the journey that we've been on for an extra kind of 10 years or whatever, because of the appreciation that I think women have or people have for their bodies the longer that they're like in their bodies. I don't know, that kind of thing. Yeah, and I've taken pictures of myself. Well, I've taken pictures of everything and everyone. I've been that person to take pictures at every event for my whole life. And yeah, I have pictures from like every month of my life from grade 9 on, basically. So in there is also pictures of my body and how my body has changed over the years. And I really use those. I don't share them with anybody, but I use those as kind of tools of kind of like a reality check, or like a kind of collection of, yes, your body grows and changes, and like, but it's, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I think in a lot of ways I've used pictures as powerful tools for myself, and I'm excited to be able to use that and have kind of other people have the same kind of feelings from it, if that makes sense.
I love that. So what I'm hearing is you're looking to book boudoir sessions in Guelph, Ontario.
Yes.
I love it. I like the idea of like using, always like plugging your business too. So cool. So what I would do then is continue to build this list out. And as you come across sites, like save them, right? Even create a bookmark folder on your computer. Because my little dirty little secret about web design and really like any type of rhetorical communication is that we're doing a lot of borrowing, and there's nothing new out there, right? So you're just recombining, creating something that like works with you, but there's a lot of borrowing, especially from visual elements. And the reason for that is like people have this schema in their minds of like what a website should look and feel like. Same thing with a piece of software. And you can't just totally break the mold because people won't know how to use it. They won't know how to interact with it. So whereas art, I think, is maybe about like uh, shaking things up, I feel like rhetoric is about entering the conversation in a way that's like meaningful and says, hey, I understand what you guys were talking about, and this is my contribution. So,
Right.
little tangent there. So words and adjectives, what I did while you were talking was just tried to bold some up here as well. That it sounded like we're really resonating. So positive, balance, take risks, unapologetic. Self-care came out a lot too. So those types of things. And you'll see where we're going to use those in just a second. Let's go down to number 5. And then you've got a couple more benchmarks here. And it looks like you've got some templates, which is great. So I have nothing against using templates. I think templates are a really lovely starting place, and you can definitely still incorporate your brand and make it look like your own. And so I love that you found some really cool Wix templates. Let's just open this third one just for fun.
Yeah, that's the hardest part too for me about like trying to visualize this website and go through this website process, is that it's, like you said, there's not really any way to break the mold, but for somebody new, really you're kind of limited to this very simple kind of what everyone is used to seeing. And that kind of, again, doesn't really feel, I don't know, I'm really trying to, from the ground up, every piece of it be me.
Yeah.
And so that's where the website has been really difficult, because it hasn't really felt like me at all, because it's already kind of what everyone's used to seeing. There's nothing really me about it. So that's why this is going to be really great to kind of figure out how I can find the me in the website, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like for a template like this, I feel like the me would come out in probably taking out some of this vector art, because that's, very stock and maybe not the most authentic representation, but the structure I think is what you can really borrow. So rather than like starting from scratch on a blank screen, you've got like some of this structure. So I've got my menu up here, right? I've got a header, sort of a very traditional header with a call to action right here, right? And so as sort of like a side note to anyone who's using a template, the one thing that I don't like about templates is what people typically do is they think that these are all boxes that they have to fill, and that eliminates a little bit of the strategy behind the website. So we'll plan out our pages, and if you come to a section that just doesn't make sense, like literally this is what I'll see people do. Like maybe if I'm a chef, I'll be like, pizzas, right? And then you're like, wait, why is that on the homepage though? Like, right? Because they come to this part where they're like, okay, well, I've got to fill this box, and I've got to change this picture, and I've got to add this paragraph, and I've got to have these 3 sections. And it's like, no, use the template, but use it more as like visual structural elements, and then create your own content within that. So do that. I don't even want to see it there. Cool. So what did you like about this template? Can you talk about that a little bit?
I liked this part of it, the services, how they're outlined like that with the book now button. I think that would work really well for me to have the different portrait services or different things right there with the picture and the description in the book now. I would think that would be nice to kind of make it really kind of streamlined. I liked kind of the colors. I don't like how big the margins are. But then there was another one before that, another template that I like too.
It's gonna take a minute to load out.
Yeah, I think it's this one.
Let me go back to this one for a second while this one loads. So the way that I see a landing page, and we'll get to this in week 3, but a landing page, in my opinion, should be like a table of contents. So you're thinking through, like, I've got my intro, like this is about I am, your mission statement up at the top, and then thinking what are my priorities and like taking your user on a journey. So if what I want my user to do is learn about me, because I think that's like the first step in selling myself and selling my brand, I might have a little bit about me right here, right? So a journey from the normal to the extraordinary, right? That could be your headline, and then you have, I don't know, don't take that one. You can have that. So then you might have a learn more, right? And that takes you to the about page. And you might scroll down, services I offer, boudoir photography, personal branding photography, this type of photography, book, right? And those will take you to your booking page. And then you have like, I'm also a maker, right? So we would need to add a section there because you not only have that photography element, but you also have these other services of providing props and or the crafts and wares that you've been creating. So we want to add another section there. And that, again, just touching back, not to be a broken record, but that's the danger of, right, using a template, because I see a lot of people that they're like, okay, well, I've got my services, I've got my about me, and then they just stop, right? So even when you're using a template, totally feel comfortable adding sections, because your business isn't exactly like this business, right? You don't have to go to completely custom, but you have that additional service that needs to be added to the landing. So let's see if this loaded. Oops, yes, it did. Oh, this is pretty. I like that.
Yeah, I like this one because I like the like text overlays, and I like how it kind of, they mix it up as you kind of scroll down with different kind of like mosaics and different kind of layouts. I like how simple it is too.
Yeah.
And yeah, I like the testimonial part. I think that's going to be a big piece for me. And I like the white background too.
Yeah, white space is really nice. I think if you want things to look like clean, this is a very clean looking website. A good amount of white space too. It's very light and airy.
Yeah.
So starting to notice the differences there. Why do I like this? Why do I like that? Font, the use of font is really nice here as well.
Yeah. I kind of like the idea of kind of like a click-through landing page. And I kind of like the idea of kind of like a pop-up, like, hey, here's a nice message for the day, that might kind of like rotate and change on a regular basis. So just kind of give the start off of like, hey, remember my purpose is to make sure that you feel loved and you feel enough. And so that every time you go to my website, you have to kind of go through this verification process of like, hey, remember you're human and you deserve love and you deserve happiness and you deserve this. As like our first and foremost, this is what my website and my intent is really kind of about. And then I have an idea or like have a possible vision, and not breaking down into, once you kind of click through that first part kind of being like, yes, you're right, I am awesome. And then kind of going into then maybe another kind of click through where or it's like, are you looking into the photography side of things or like the making side of things? So then it's super streamlined and sticks to the purpose in the like very beginning of like, first and foremost, I want you to know that you matter.
Yes.
And then it's like, hey, what are you here for? And that way, yeah, it's really straightforward. I'm kind of thinking of it as I want my dad to be able to follow the website on his phone. And if he can follow it on his phone, then I feel like I'm happy with that. I want him to be able to navigate. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And what you're talking about is user testing, which is really important. So asking people like, and that could be your friends and family. Big companies will like hire people to do this, but you know, it could also be your friends and family, to just do things, right? And watch them do it. That's really important, right? So if you said, Dad, can you go to my website and try to find out how to book me? And he's like, I
Mm-hmm.
can't do it. I can't figure it out. Then you're like, okay, cool. Well, I need to fix something, right? Because my user can't figure it out.
Right.
The term user a lot. What I mean by user is like a client, right? So anybody who's on your website, potential client. Every industry has their own word: customer, prospective, sale. But so those interactive elements, I love the idea of having like a light box that's not necessarily like a I want to get your email address right away type of a light box. That's really cool. And you could totally like add check boxes that were like, I matter, I value, I do this, and sort of like break the mold of the light box, right? Because so often we come to a website and it's like, get 10% off, like enter your email address, check, right? So maybe that's how you break the mold there, is adding one of these light boxes, and you can customize the look and feel of it. But instead of it being about you, making it sort of like this conversation of like, just, hey, just a reminder. So that, yeah, I love that idea. I think that's great. So that's, yes, you asked what the word was. Wix calls it a light box, and that's under interactive here. And you could also call it like a modal window. And just as a cautionary thing there, you don't want to have a bunch of modal windows all over your website. One on the way in is perfect. But definitely, you know, it's one of those things where it's like, you've had that annoying experience where you're like, oh my God, get that thing off the page. I want to see this stuff, right? So you get one modal, maybe two, if you're lucky, right? No. So cool. I love that idea. And then the way that I would handle, and we can get back to this later when we get more into design, but that idea that you really want to differentiate those two different types of users, people who are here for photography, people who are here to buy crafts or whatever, is probably with anchors. So if you wanted to put like up at the top, like, I am here for custom photography, really cute crafts, right? Then you can click anchor points and then it'll automatically scroll to that section, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I would do there. So again, you're taking the template and you're building off of that. All right, it is 9:42. So let's go back and see if we have any other questions to answer. I love that you added those. Those benchmarks are really actually super helpful, and I might use that in the future with people, because now not only do you have like a couple of different templates that you like, but you also have like the benchmarks above of the studios and the different photographers that you admire too. So the combination of those is really helpful. And by picking templates, you already have like something that you can work from.
Right.
All right, so it looks like you do have a logo. It is, I'm like leaning in, it's a little tiny. In your color palette, and you've got your fonts. Cool. And are these things where you're really like pretty much settled on this palette?
Not necessarily. I kind of designed one that was a little bit brighter and kind of played into like the pop a bit more.
Yeah.
But then I just kind of came back to this kind of sort of neutral color palette. I do really like the greens. But yeah, I kind of came up with those in the fonts. I was just looking at like 2021 fonts and like different design things for 2021. And that's kind of where I came up with those ones, and I like those ones.
Yeah.
But I know that like color psychology is a thing. So yeah, I'm not sold on them. I'm not but I do like them. So I don't know.
Don't
Open to suggestion if you think that there would be something that would work better.
Okay, so my question would always be like, what is the impact? What do these fonts say? And I think that that's like a hard question, but an important question to answer. So for me, when I'm looking at these fonts, I feel that they're very, very playful. So just to compare it to like the template that you just showed me,
Yeah.
not playful at all, right? This is organic, clean, earthy. And those are the adjectives that I would assign to this. Whereas if you were, and you can do this on Wix, you can go in and change like all your H1s at one time, all your H2s at one time, all your H3s. It's super nice. If you were to replace all of those instantly, a site that once looked very clean, organic, and earthy, very almost like contemporary, right? This has a contemporary feel to it, would feel very different, right?
Yeah.
So just thinking to yourself, are those my adjectives, or is clean, organic, earthy my adjectives, right? Because fonts really do convey that. This one, just as a very quick note, is going to be hard to read. So I would not put anything super important in this font, right? Just use it as little touch points throughout the site. This one's really easy to read, so that's great. And then I've never heard of this. Glacial indifference. Okay. And are all of these Google fonts?
Not sure if they're all Google fonts. I have them on my BizMe and Canva and different, like all of my things. I've downloaded them and found them, but yeah. I sent you in the email some different like things that I've made on Canva that have the fonts and stuff in them. So I kind of like that first one in like a caps, because I think it kind of is like a bold, but not, I kind of like the style of it. And then I like the middle script one, because I just feel like script is a little bit more of like a communication kind of thing. And then the last one would be like kind of like on the sample website would be like the big information that's like really clear in that writing. And then the glacial indifference has like a bold and all of those as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and your body is like perfect right here. This is easy to read and simple, right? Like you would never want anyone to have to read a full paragraph like that.
Yeah.
So let's just look. I opened up fonts.google.com and I'm just going to see if these are Google fonts. Okay. So my recommendation would be to choose Google fonts just for the sake of your browser. So if you find something similar, and maybe this is just like a little stipulation. So maybe you do separate fonts for print than you do for web, and that would be totally fine too. But you definitely don't want to run into issues where it's like, oh, the browser can't even recognize this font, right?
Yeah, there's a ton of ones that are like glacial and different that I'm sure we could just swap out.
Yeah. And the nice thing about Google fonts, I just said, I'm like pausing because I'm like, the browser won't be able to recognize the font. I don't even know if that's a thing, but I've always been told to use Google fonts. So I'm just going to say, let's use Google fonts for the website. But the nice thing about Google fonts is that you can like sort them out. So if you want something like handwriting, right, you just go like this. And you're like, oh, look at all these choices I have. That's cute.
Yeah.
Right? So like, I don't have to look through all thousands and thousands of them. I don't know if there's thousands, but you want to see these ones that are a little bit more like what you had before, like maybe like this one.
Yeah. Yeah, I use a website that I think it's like what font is it .tf or something, and it just pulls up all the fonts on my computer.
Yeah.
Really
cool.
Okay.
So back to the homework. I like your color palette. I think that it's really super pretty, and I especially like it that you have this nice cream color that'll add a lot of warmth to the page versus just like a traditional white background. But if you wanted to like make this the predominant color and then use like This one, the only thing I might say about this one is maybe, although it seems like your green is like more of your predominant color, this against cream might not have the highest readability rating. So that's another thing that you can test out as you think about your brand, is test for ADA compliance colors. So I'm gonna go to contrast checker. But basically what you can do here is you can take those codes from Canva, those color codes, and just test to see what the contrast ratio is, because we definitely want people to be able to read it no matter what their visual capabilities are. So it's nice to just know, like, is this ADA compliant? Even though, like, of course, you're not like a giant corporation like Monsanto, like nobody's going to sue you if they can't read it, but it's nice to create a space that's welcoming and accepting of all people. And so I would just run those through a color checker like this.
Interesting. Yeah, sure. Cool. I didn't know that was the thing.
Yeah. So that was it. And I like your logo. That's very precious. Did you do that one yourself?
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. It's nice because, like, it's super interesting. Like, some people just have a nice eye for things, and like they're like, yeah, I think I can handle the logo. And I would be honest with you if I was like, no, I don't. Like, so it's nice when people do have a little bit of an eye for design and can get some of that stuff started on their own. So this is very cute. Cool. All right. So we have 10 minutes. So what I'm going to do really quickly is show you a couple of exemplar brand guides, and you can do as much or as little as possible, or as you need, I guess I would say. And then I'll talk about a couple different resources. And within the next couple of days, if you want to just solidify your brand guide, I think that would be a great, wonderful place to start before next week when we start creating these user personas. So I typically, and I'm going to close a couple of these tabs. I typically create in Figma, but Canva is another really good resource for this. So this is a brand guide that I created for Relogics, which is a stem cell company. And basically in your brand guide, you're telling people who you are. So you want to have your intro, like, I am a studio in Guelph, Ontario. My mission is to blank, right? So you've got your mission and your values. You can do a couple of different iterations of your logo. These are just more logo iterations. This is what like a business card would look like. And then you want to have your colors and your fonts. And you can put the codes in as well here too. That would be totally fine. And then this is for their app design, so I'll skip over that. And then just some imagery. I think it's nice to start to solidify the types of images that you want to use throughout the site. For you, it'll be a lot of your own photography. But sort of, you know, really thinking about the look and feel and like what types of pictures and images and what meaning and like feelings do those convey as well, because all of the images that we choose create this like stimulus inside of people. And I think it's important to be intentional about the images that we're putting on the page.
Yeah. Intentional is another big word. I'm trying to be very intentional about everything that I'm doing and really be challenging what I'm considering to be kind of intentional, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, and I think a lot of people skip over like the branding stage, and I think that, yeah, you can definitely get something done super quick, but then in a year from now, when you have like the funding to hire a business coach or to have something professionally designed, they're going to tell you, like, we should have done this step. We should have done this work first, right? Because everything should align. Everything should come from a very firm foundation. And again, going back to those 3 questions, who am I, who's my audience, and what do I want them to do, think, or feel, right? So this is the who am I step. So I would create my brand guide. And I think it also, like, it is that piece of feeling like a real business. When you have a brand guide, it helps you like feel like, I'm taking this seriously. I didn't just write it on a piece of napkin. I'm taking myself seriously and I know who I am, right? So you already use Canva, which is great, but just so you have this in the back of your mind, if you search brand guide presentation or brand guide, you'll be able to find a template to use really quickly, so you don't have to just start from scratch. And I think Canva is a great resource for someone who's not trying to start a career in design and just like wants to be able to have a very simple user interface and a free program to start graphic design. Try any one of these, and feel free to delete pages too. So I think I looked at this one right before we started, and I'm going to go ahead and skip my tour. I don't know why I get a tour today, but I'm going to apply all 22 pages. But again, in the same way that like if something doesn't serve you, don't use it. Like if you're like, I don't want this here, right? Just delete it. Delete anything that you don't want. If you don't feel like you need half of this stuff, like the iconography, I don't know if you have any icons that you want to use, but you can delete that. So you can browse through all of the different brand guide options and use that. Or you can Google search brand guide, and there are definitely some very, very simple ones like that are easy to follow and easy to recreate. So yes, love it.
To try to have like a super detailed, comprehensive brand guide with lots of like information or whatever in there, or is it better to really focus on like finding the succinct kind of, you know, like
I would say be a little bit more succinct in your brand guide than you were in your homework assignment, but that's I think, and I'm trying to say that like with the caveat of like, I think it was really good that you wrote all this out, right? Like start with more, then pare it down. Otherwise it's like you have having more to work with and trim away from is definitely ideal. So I think it's really good that you did this work, and I think it's super important.
That just keep refining.
Yeah, refine it and pare it down, and think of it almost as like a presentation. Like if someone was like, I kind of want to invest in your company, like, can you tell me a little bit more? Yes, let me go through these items really quick and give you a very brief overview of who we are. If you're working for a company that's a little bit bigger, the brand guide would also be something that you could pass off to like a design team, or to like, for instance, if you get to a point in your career where you're like, I'm going to hire someone to do all my marketing, they would be like, can you show me your brand guide? Because I want to make sure that I'm following it, right? So it's something that you can also pass off to a design team too. And it can sort of be a like how to make everything look good and make everything feel consistent and like follow the foundations that I've set as the business owner.
Okay.
Yeah. Sweet. All right, we have 4 more minutes left. So do you have any questions for me?
Well, not small questions. My big question is, how does this translate to social media, and how do I that's not a 4-minute conversation. But that's kind of where I kind of keep going back to is how do I then put this into also social media, and how to balance those two. But I think throughout the process and refining and all of that, that's just going to come, I think.
Yeah. So I usually talk about social media in weeks like 7 and 8.
Okay.
But in the same way, and you've already started to do this, which is great, in the same way that you were benchmarking your websites that you like and templates that you like, start to benchmark social media pages that you like and just think about, why do you like them, right? And I think this one it's lovely in the way that it shows a lot of the product. For me, my social media strategy tends to be a little bit more value add, meaning that like not every single post would be something that I offer.
Right.
So the way that this person's strategy is working is that they're almost using their social media as an online store. Like these are the things that I have. Right. But and that is a strategy, right? That's totally something that you can do.
I put this one in because this person is using a Cricut machine, which is the same machine that I'm using for my crafts. And then, yeah, so this is the kind of the same thing in that I can do all of these personalization kind of things. And it's, again, like coming back to, I don't know what to call it. I don't know if I should call it crafts or like what to call it, but yeah, so that one was just kind of an example of the sort of things that I can make with the Cricut machine, but I don't know what to call it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So even that, like the language can also be part of your brand guide. So for instance, I think every company kind of comes up with their own lingo and terms, and that sort of plays into the culture, right? So if the word crafts to you has a connotation of like, I knitted a sweater and there might be crumbs on it because I did it with my cat, like, then don't use
Yes.
it, right? So like wares is another word that you could use, and like you can borrow those words too. Like if you want to say like I'm a maker, these are my made goods.
Okay.
Something like that. But yes, all words have connotations associated with them, and so if there's a word that for whatever reason doesn't feel like it fits with your brand, then try to find a new one, but keep in mind that language is a shared experience. So like if you decide to call them, I don't know, something that doesn't land with other people and they're just like, I have no idea what you're doing because the word maker isn't landing with me, because it's a pretty new term, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so keeping that in mind as well.
Yeah.
The feedback comes in, right? Because we all have this sort of perception of like what the world thinks of us and our business and the language we're using, but that doesn't always match reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm going to stop share for right now. So just to cover in our last very short minute, this week you are creating a brand guide, and I'm going to go ahead and give you access to the Google Classroom and just like create like a little assignment there, and you can actually just post it right there.
Okay.
And then I will also post all of the tabs and resources that we went over today. So if you want to take a look at like fonts.google.com or that ADA checker, you can find them again. But yeah, and then I'll post a recording there too if you want to take a look at that. And next week we will talk about user personas. Who is your ideal client and what do they need?
Okay, perfect. Sounds good.
All right, girl, it was so nice to see you this morning. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And I'll see you next Tuesday at 9.